The scent of drying mugwort and the gentle hum of simmering tinctures usually brought Sarah a profound peace. It was her shield, her solace. But not today. Today, an undercurrent of unease, a prickle of anticipation, snaked through the quiet air of her sun-dappled cottage. She meticulously crushed dried comfrey leaves, her movements fluid and practiced, her hands calloused from years of tending herbs and ailments, moving with a delicate precision that belied her inner turmoil. "She's burning up, Sarah. Please!" A frantic cry ripped through the quiet, shattering her concentration. Sarah looked up, her heart aching. A young couple stood framed in her doorway, their faces etched with terror, clutching a small bundled form. This was Alara, a child from the adjacent human community, known for her bright laughter. Now, her skin was flushed, her breathing shallow and ragged. Local doctors had offered empty shrugs and ineffective remedies. They didn't understand the whispers of the land, the subtle imbalances that only someone like Sarah could perceive. She moved swiftly, her touch light as she placed a cool hand on Alara's forehead. A faint shimmer, almost imperceptible, pulsed beneath the child's skin, a familiar yet unsettling energy. It wasn't a human ailment, it was a resonance, a discordant hum from the unseen world. "It's a subtle energy imbalance," Sarah murmured, more to herself than to the parents. "The ley lines near the old oak grove. They've been disturbed." She gathered specific herbs, their essence a whispered language only she could interpret. "A poultice of silverleaf and moon petal will soothe the fever, and a diluted infusion of sunroot for her strength. She will be well." Her voice, though soft, carried an unwavering certainty that instantly calmed the frantic parents. She gave them gentle instructions, watching as the child's breathing already began to steady. Sarah cultivated this quiet, self-sufficient life precisely because it was within these walls, helping these innocent people, that she felt safe, useful, and truly herself. She found a quiet contentment here, a sanctuary from the shadows of her past. As the parents finally left, murmuring heartfelt thanks, a subtle shift in the wind carried a new scent, wild, raw, and undeniably shifter. It wasn't the earthy, familiar scent of the local forest animals, but something ancient, powerful, and distinctly lupine. A shiver traced its way down her spine, raising goosebumps on her arms. It was a phantom echo of a life she'd painstakingly buried, a ripple of unease that promised disruption. Later that evening, the moon hung like a silver coin in the velvet sky, casting long dancing shadows across Sarah's thriving herb garden. The air, typically cool and crisp, felt strangely heavy, almost expectant. She knelt, tending to her night-blooming jasmine, its sweet fragrance a stark contrast to the growing tension in her chest. A familiar figure emerged from the tree line, her silhouette framed by the moonlight. It was Alara, an elderly woman from the community, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, her eyes wise and knowing. She was one of the few who understood Sarah's true nature, though the specifics of Sarah's painful past remained unspoken between them. "Still out here, child?" Alara's voice was a low rumble like distant thunder. "The world feels restless tonight." Sarah nodded, straightening up, her gaze sweeping the familiar landscape. "I feel it too, Alara. Whispers on the wind, like static before a storm." She didn't like the unsettling energy shifts Alara mentioned, the rumors of rogue shifters. Not after all the trouble she had been through. That's why she fled. "More than whispers," Alara countered, settling onto a mossy stone bench. "The veil thins, the old ways stir, and your solitude, Sarah, it's deep. Too deep for a woman meant for companionship." Alara's words, gentle as they were, pricked at an old wound. She was subtly trying to get her to open up, she knew. Your heart can't heal if you keep it locked away. Sarah turned away, a flicker of pain crossing her face, quickly masked. "Some hearts are better off unchained," she said, her voice laced with a bitterness she rarely allowed herself to show. I won't return to that life. Not ever again. The life she had consciously chosen to leave behind. A life of powerful bonds and even more powerful betrayals. Deep down, she knew the truth. Her fear of powerful bonds, of letting anyone close enough to hurt her again, was a chasm she hadn't yet dared to bridge. Still, the peace she had found here was her own making, and she would guard it fiercely. She preferred to live alone because a life of powerful bonds meant a life of powerful betrayals. As the silence stretched between them, a distant howl tore through the night. It wasn't the mournful cry of a lone wolf, nor the familiar bark of a coyote. This was something else entirely. Deeper, more resonant, a sound that vibrated in Sarah's very bones. Both women stiffened, their conversation ending abruptly as the primal call echoed, a chilling promise of what was to come. The morning after, a pale and trembling messenger burst into Sarah's cottage, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Sarah, it's the creek, near the old border. Everything's dying." His words painted a vivid picture of devastation. He spoke of a rapid, unexplained blight affecting a vital water source, the lifeblood of their community, dangerously close to ancient, unspoken territorial lines. Not only that, but the symptoms were unnatural. A greenish-black rot spreading like a plague, hinting at paranormal interference. The local community, seeing their crops wither and their water sicken, begged Sarah, their resident healer and quiet guardian, to investigate. They trusted her intuition, her connection to the land that ran deeper than any doctor's training. Sarah felt a rising dread. This wasn't just a physical ailment. It was a wound on the land itself, a deliberate act of malice. Her immediate goal was to understand and mitigate the crisis, to protect her people, her quiet haven. Emotionally, she was torn. Her commitment to her community pulled her forward, but the crisis pushed her closer, irrevocably, to the shifter world she had abandoned. A primal pull, a deep-seated instinct she couldn't ignore, urged her to confront the unnatural energy. What's worse, the wild scent she'd caught yesterday was stronger now, a dark promise on the wind, drawing her in. No matter how hard she tried to ignore it, the blight was a direct assault on her ordinary world, a clear sign that the forces she'd avoided for so long were finally breaching her carefully constructed peace. She strapped on her satchel of remedies, her hands instinctively going to the familiar weight of her healing tools. As the wind shifted, she set off towards the affected area, the wild scent she'd noticed earlier growing stronger and more defined with every step, an almost magnetic pull leading her towards an unknown yet strangely familiar destiny. The blighted area was a grotesque tableau of nature's agony. Trees, once vibrant with life, stood as skeletal fingers clawing at the bruised sky. Their leaves, shriveled and blackened, crumbled to dust at Sarah's touch, because the blight sucked the very essence from them. A sickly sweet odor, like rotting fruit mixed with something metallic, stung her nostrils, making her stomach churn. She knelt by the creek, its usually clear waters now a murky, viscous sludge that seemed to writhe with an unseen malevolence. Her fingers, usually so adept at coaxing life from the earth, trembled as she examined a patch of corrupted moss. This was no ordinary disease. This was a deliberate act, a dark magic seeping into the land. Suddenly, a guttural snarl ripped through the unnatural silence. Before she could move, a shadow detached itself from the twisted trees, lunging. It was a rogue shifter, gaunt and feral, its eyes glowing with an unsettling, feverish hunger. Its fur was matted, its movements jerky and unpredictable, because the blight had clearly twisted its mind. A low, menacing growl vibrated in its chest, a sound that promised violence. Sarah instinctively threw up her hands, a flash of pure terror searing through her. This was it. The world she had fled had finally caught up. But then, just as the rogue's claws were inches from her face, a blur of motion erupted from the forest's edge. 3 magnificent wolves, their coats like midnight shadows, burst into the clearing. They moved with a synchronized grace that spoke of immense power and ancient lineage. These weren't just wolves. They were alphas, their presence radiating an almost unbearable intensity. The rogue, momentarily startled, hesitated. In that moment, as if pulled by an invisible string, the largest of the three, a magnificent black wolf with eyes like molten gold, locked gazes with Sarah. A jolt, raw and electric, shot through her. It wasn't just recognition. It was an undeniable surge of power, a collective wolf howl that echoed not in the air, but deep within her very bones. Mate. The single, impossible word screamed in her mind, silencing the world, halting all combat. The air crackled, thick with an energy that made her vision swim. The black wolf, Alaric, snapped his attention back to the rogue, his confusion quickly replaced by a cold, lethal resolve. With a swift, brutal efficiency, he dispatched the rogue, its yelp cut short as it crumpled to the ground. But Sarah barely registered it. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. 3 of them? The sheer force of their bond, their instant, undeniable recognition of her, triggered a full-blown panic attack. Memories of her past rejection, of Damon's cruel laughter flooded her mind, suffocating her. Her immediate goal was simple: escape. She had to run, to flee from this terrifying, impossible twist of fate. She didn't know what scared her more, the rogue or the impossible connection to these 3 powerful beings. She tried to bolt, her legs screaming for freedom. But Bram, the largest and most imposing of the 3, now shifted into his human form. A wall of muscle and fierce protectiveness blocked her path. His eyes, wide with stunned recognition, held a fierce, unfamiliar possessiveness that overwhelmed her, freezing her in place. Bram's sudden presence, a towering figure radiating raw, untamed possessiveness, sent a fresh wave of panic through Sarah. His eyes, the color of a stormy sky, seemed to burn into her, claiming her without a single word. She recoiled, her breath catching in her throat. Alaric, however, regained his composure with a visible effort. He shifted, his movements fluid and powerful, his dark hair falling across his strong brow. He took a cautious step forward, his voice a low, steady rumble trying to soothe the tempest raging within her. "Luna," he began, his voice laced with an undeniable authority. "The bond, it's undeniable. Rare, yes, but absolute." Sarah flinched at the title, the word a painful echo of a past she'd tried to bury. "Don't call me that!" Her voice trembled, laced with a bitter venom. "There is no bond. Not with me. Not ever again." She glared at them, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and defiance. Bram's intensity was suffocating, making her feel trapped, vulnerable. Corvus, the 3rd brother, shifted silently, his presence quieter, almost apologetic. He seemed to sense her terror, his deep green eyes holding a profound understanding that momentarily softened the edges of her panic. He was a stark contrast to his brothers, creating a subtle internal division among them. "You don't understand," Sarah choked out, the words ripping from her throat, raw with old pain. "I've been down this road before. I was rejected, cast aside, broken." Her voice cracked, revealing glimpses of her shattered past, of the Luna she was supposed to be before Damon's betrayal. "I refuse to be a pawn in your pack politics. I refuse to be claimed by anyone, especially not 3 of you." Her immediate goal was to deny this impossible bond, to push them away, because she couldn't bear another heartbreak. Emotionally, she was a whirlwind of fear, anger, and profound vulnerability, struggling desperately against the overwhelming pull she felt towards them. It was a magnetic force, a primal hum that resonated with her very soul, despite her fierce resistance. Alaric's jaw tightened, but he didn't press. He understood, perhaps more than his brothers, the depth of her pain. "We are not him," he stated, his voice firm, "and this bond, it is different. It is ours." Bram let out a low growl of agreement, his possessiveness still radiating, but now tempered by a surprising patience. Corvus, meanwhile, simply watched her, his silent empathy a balm. Realizing they couldn't force her, Alaric surprisingly suggested a temporary truce. "Let us help you," he offered, his gaze sweeping over the blighted land. "We will stabilize this land, ensure your community's safety. All we ask is a chance to prove our worth." Sarah, seeing the genuine danger to her community and the sincerity in Alaric's eyes, reluctantly agreed to their presence, but not their claim. She would accept their help, but her heart remained a fortress. With a reluctant nod, Sarah agreed to the triplets' presence, her gaze still wary, her emotional walls firmly in place. What followed was a tense, yet surprisingly efficient collaboration. Sarah, armed with her knowledge of the land's subtle energies, directed their efforts. She watched them work, each brother moving with a distinct, powerful grace. Alaric, the strategist, assessed the blight with a keen, analytical mind, his commands precise and unwavering. Bram, the brute force, channeled raw power into healing the corrupted earth, his strength undeniable. Corvus, the quiet observer, moved with an almost ethereal lightness, his touch gentle as he helped Sarah identify the most affected areas, his intuition a silent echo of her own. Truth be told, their combined power was formidable, a stark contrast to the scattered efforts of the rogue shifter. As they worked, a new, more sinister wave of the unnatural affliction swept through the area, spreading faster and with a chilling intensity. It wasn't just a rogue. This was a coordinated attack, revealing a more organized and dangerous threat. "It's a deliberate assault," Sarah murmured, her voice tight with urgency. "They're trying to cut off the water source, isolate the community." Alaric nodded, his expression grim. "The source is deeper, across the old Blackwood border. We need to go there to stop it completely." Sarah hesitated. Crossing into Blackwood territory meant stepping back into the heart of the shifter world she had painstakingly abandoned. It meant confronting the very essence of her past trauma. Her heart skipped a beat, but the image of Alara, the sickly child, flashed in her mind. Her community was in danger. She couldn't abandon them. Her world tilted. With a deep breath, she made her decision. "Lead the way," she said, her voice firm, because her duty to her people outweighed her fear. This act, however small, symbolized her stepping back into the shifter world, a point of no return. As they moved deeper into the ancient forest, the air grew heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth, punctuated by the faint, musky scent of wolf. They passed Blackwood warriors, their faces a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Sarah overheard snippets of conversation, hushed whispers that pricked at her ears. "Rejected Luna," one warrior murmured, his gaze lingering on her. "3 alphas, a strange bond." Another added, "What does this mean for the pack?" The words confirmed her worst fears. Her reputation, her painful past, had indeed preceded her. She was inextricably linked to the Blackwood triplets and their world now, whether she liked it or not. The overarching threat and the impossible bond had firmly established themselves. The journey to the Blackwood Pack territory was a blur of heightened senses for Sarah. The air grew thicker with the scent of wolf, not just of her 3 unexpected mates, but of countless others, a complex tapestry of scents that spoke of generations, of a deep-rooted lineage. This wasn't just a patch of woods, it was a living, breathing entity. The territory opened into a vast valley, nestled between imposing, ancient peaks. Massive, gnarled oaks, centuries old, stood like silent sentinels, their branches heavy with the wisdom of ages. Blackwood Pack territory, Alaric explained, was adjacent to her old packs, close enough to send a shiver of dread down her spine. The experience was jarring, a stark reminder of all she'd lost. She observed the intricate hierarchy immediately. Warriors moved with quiet purpose, their eyes sharp and assessing. Elders, their faces etched with the solemnity of tradition, watched her with wary, curious stares. Sarah could feel the weight of their scrutiny, each gaze a silent question. She was an outsider, a ghost from a past they'd only heard whispers of. The triplets, usually so formidable, seemed to struggle with how to introduce her. Alaric, ever the pragmatic leader, attempted a formal announcement, his voice carrying authority, yet a hint of forced calm. "This is Seraphina," he stated, his eyes sweeping the assembled pack. "She is assisting us with the blight." It was an obvious understatement because their bond hummed between them, undeniable, electric. Bram, sensing her discomfort and the pack's skepticism, radiated a protective defiance. He stood closer to Sarah, his immense presence a silent challenge to anyone who dared question her. He let out a low, rumbling growl when an older, burly male alpha stared too long. Corvus, however, remained subtly watchful, his gaze never leaving Sarah's face, assessing her reactions, his silent support a stark contrast to his brother's more overt displays. Sarah's goal was clear: establish her boundaries, assert her independence, and prove her worth as a healer, not merely as some fated mate. She stood tall, meeting the pack's stares with an unyielding gaze. She was a mix of apprehension, defiance, and a deep sense of being an outsider under intense scrutiny, because she refused to be defined by her past. She wouldn't allow it. As the gathering began to disperse, an elder, a stern-faced female with piercing gray eyes, approached Sarah directly. "The rejected Luna returns," she stated, her voice a dry rasp that seemed to carry the weight of generations. Her words were sharp, piercing Sarah's carefully constructed composure. What magic binds our alphas to such a tainted fate? Her question was pointed, implicitly challenging the validity of the triplets' mate choice. It planted seeds of doubt, not just in the pack, but within Sarah herself. Sarah was given a temporary dwelling, a small rustic cabin intentionally separate from the main pack house, yet still firmly within Blackwood territory. It was a clear statement. You are here, but you are not one of us. Still, she felt the subtle rhythms of pack life, the ebb and flow of their collective energy so different from her quiet solitude. She saw the warriors training, their movements a synchronized ballet of strength and discipline. She observed the families, their laughter echoing through the trees, a poignant reminder of the life she'd once longed for. She often clashed with their customs, their strict adherence to tradition clashing with her fiercely independent nature. Meanwhile, she observed the triplets more closely. Alaric, during council meetings, was a master strategist, his mind a labyrinth of tactical brilliance. Bram, in training, was raw strength personified, his every movement a testament to untamed power. Corvus, quietly overseeing patrols, possessed a perceptiveness that seemed to pierce through pretenses, seeing the truth hidden beneath the surface. Each brother, in their own way, attempted to connect with her individually. Alaric would approach her with reasoned arguments about pack needs and shared destiny. Bram would linger near her cabin, his silent presence a heavy, undeniable anchor. Corvus, however, understood. He would leave specific healing herbs she'd mentioned needing outside her door, or simply sit in silent solidarity, a stark contrast to her previous mate's actions, and to his brother's more demanding presences. He never pushed. Sarah, however, kept her emotional walls firmly in place, politely deflecting their advances. She assessed their intentions, still wary, because she had been burned before. Her goal was to maintain emotional distance while proving her practical value as a healer. She was a blend of cautious observation, a quiet internal struggle against the resurfacing connection, and a strong will to remain unattached. One afternoon, a young brash pack member, barely out of adolescence, approached her with a sneer. "What could a lone human know about our ways? Our ailments?" he challenged, his voice dripping with condescension. Before Sarah could respond, Bram stepped forward, a low rumble emanating from his chest, his eyes flashing a warning. Alaric from a distance subtly cleared his throat, a quiet but firm reminder of her protected status. The young wolf immediately backed down, muttering apologies. It was a small victory, a subtle defense of her worth, and she couldn't deny a flicker of warmth at their silent support. Yet, she didn't acknowledge it. During a quiet moment later that day, Corvus approached Sarah. He didn't speak, didn't demand. Instead, he simply extended a hand, offering her a sprig of nightshade, a powerful herb she had been searching for, its deep, purple bell-like flowers shimmering in the dappled light. It was a simple, understanding gesture, a stark contrast to her previous mate's domineering nature. He understood her, even without words. The fragile piece of Seraphina's new reality was short-lived, because news of the triplets' rejected Luna mate eventually reached Alpha Daemon. He acted swiftly, sending an arrogant, manipulative envoy to the Blackwood territory, ostensibly to check on old alliances. Sarah knew better. This was a reconnaissance mission, a blatant attempt to gauge the situation and assess her perceived weakness. The envoy, a slick-haired wolf with a smug smile, reeked of Daemon's specific brand of cruelty. During a tense gathering in the main hall, the envoy, whose name was Kale, made subtle, cutting remarks about Seraphina's past, his words like venom-tipped arrows. "It is curious," Kale purred, his eyes raking over Sarah with thinly veiled contempt. "How some fates repeat themselves. A Luna, once deemed unworthy, finds herself in such a unique position." He implied that she was a burden, a stain on the triplets' reputation. He attempted to undermine her and the triplets' bond because he wanted to create discord. The triplets, particularly Bram, struggled visibly to control their rage. Bram's knuckles were white, his jaw clenched so tight Sarah thought it might shatter. Corvus's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint in their depths. Alaric, however, maintained his composure, strategically deflecting Kale's barbs with diplomatic answers that belied his simmering fury. His calm was like a dam holding back a torrent. Sarah, surprisingly, maintained her composure. She met Kale's gaze with a quiet strength, drawing on every ounce of resilience she possessed. She wouldn't give Daemon the satisfaction of seeing her break. Her heart ached, the old wounds throbbing, but a fierce determination burned within her. She was no longer that broken girl. She was a healer, a survivor, and now, a protector of this new, tentative haven. Her goal was to remain composed and not show weakness, to prove that Daemon's rejection no longer defined her. Emotionally, she was battling a resurgence of old wounds and a fierce determination not to let history repeat itself. Kale's visit was the first direct antagonistic encounter linked to Sarah's past rejection, immediately raising the stakes and making her presence in the Blackwood territory even more precarious. As the envoy departed, his final, lingering glance at Sarah was chilling, a clear message that this wasn't over. It promised retribution, a deeper, more personal attack. Sarah felt a profound sense of foreboding, realizing her fragile peace was truly gone. Her sanctuary was no more. The unsettling visit from Daemon's envoy, Kale, was merely a precursor to the storm. Alpha Daemon, enraged by the Blackwood Pack's refusal to hand over Seraphina, began to actively destabilize their borders. He wasn't just sending spies. He was orchestrating subtle incursions, phantom attacks on outlying patrols, and stirring dissent in neighboring territories, creating a heightened sense of urgency and threat within the Blackwood lands. The air itself crackled with tension, like a taut bowstring ready to snap. Sarah felt the weight of it all, a crushing pressure that seemed to mirror the unease in her own heart. She saw the strain this put on the triplets, especially on Alaric, who bore the immense responsibility of managing his pack's expectations while trying to protect her. His jaw was perpetually tight, his eyes shadowed with worry. More importantly, the Blackwood elders, seeing the escalating conflict and the growing threat to their pack, increased their pressure on the triplets regarding Seraphina. They whispered of ancient laws, of the need for a ritualistic validation of their bond. It was a public ceremony, one that would expose Sarah again, forcing her to confront her past rejection in front of an entire pack, because tradition demanded it. Sarah's heart clenched at the thought. It was a painful echo of the very ceremony that had shattered her years ago. Her goal now was to understand Daemon's escalating moves and protect this new fragile connection to the triplets, even as she fought her ingrained fear of public scrutiny and renewed rejection. Emotionally, she felt a rising sense of dread, trapped between her painful past and an uncertain future. She knew, deep down, that the tension was building to an unbearable peak, and something had to give. She recognized the pressure on Alaric, the way his shoulders slumped with the burden. During a tense discussion about pack defenses, with elders hounding Alaric about the Luna's lineage, Bram's frustration finally boiled over. He slammed a fist onto a nearby table, the wood groaning in protest. "She is ours," he roared, his voice raw with a desperate plea for Sarah's acceptance, for the pack's acceptance. His intensity was overwhelming, a tidal wave of possessiveness that accidentally swamped Sarah. She gasped, a familiar panic tightening her chest, and she instinctively retreated emotionally, stepping back from the sheer force of his demand. The fragile bridge she was trying to build between herself and the triplets seemed to crumble, because his raw emotion triggered her deepest fear of being consumed, of losing herself to another's will. Sarah retreated to her small cabin, the echo of Bram's desperate roar still ringing in her ears, his intensity an unintended blow to her still fragile trust. She sat by the window, watching the moonlight paint silver streaks on the ancient trees, feeling the familiar pull of isolation. Her heart ached, a deep, hollow pang of despair. She thought about leaving again, disappearing into the shadows, because perhaps she was truly destined to be alone. But then, a soft knock at her door. It was Corvus. He entered quietly, his presence a calm balm after the tempest. He sat across from her, his gaze gentle, empathetic. "You are not like him, Sarah," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper, yet it resonated deep within her. He was referring to Damon. "And your past. It wasn't just his cruelty." Sarah looked up, her breath catching. Corvus paused, gathering his thoughts, his eyes reflecting a quiet urgency. "Damon was a tool, a pawn in a larger game. Your rejection was orchestrated, a strategic manipulation by a hidden faction." He revealed a crucial piece of information, a secret that had been buried beneath years of pain. It wasn't just Damon's personal cruelty. There was a deeper, more insidious conspiracy at play. Perhaps a rival pack, or a shadowy council, sought to weaken powerful Luna lines, to discredit any Luna who possessed innate magic, and ensure only those compliant to their will rose to power. Damon was either a willing participant, blinded by ambition, or an unwitting puppet in a grander scheme to destabilize ancient pack structures. "They feared your unique intuition, your connection to the land," Corvus continued, his voice low and steady. "They feared a Luna who could stand on her own, and they feared the power of a true triple bond. Because our bond, Sarah." He leaned forward, his voice a profound whisper. "It's collective. It offers a unique kind of strength against such machinations, one that no single Luna, no matter how powerful, could withstand alone. It's a shield, Sarah, not a cage." Sarah reeled, the revelation hitting her like a physical blow. Shock, cold and sharp, gave way to a simmering anger. It wasn't just her worth that had been questioned. It was a calculated attack, a targeted betrayal that went far beyond one man's cruelty. Her goal shifted dramatically. From merely surviving, she now aimed to understand the full scope of her past trauma and consider the true potential of her new bond. A sliver of hope, fragile but persistent, emerged. She wasn't inherently unlovable. She was a threat. Her rejection wasn't solely about her worth, but about her power. The revelation left Sarah reeling, but also with a new, quiet determination. She began to view the triplets, particularly Corvus, with a newfound cautious respect. The revelation from Corvus ignited a quiet fire within Seraphina. She was still wary, but her emotional walls, once so impenetrable, now had a hairline crack. She began to subtly lower her guard around the triplets, especially Corvus. She even started actively seeking out information about the hidden faction, poring over ancient Blackwood texts, trying to piece together the wider geopolitical landscape of the shifter world. She asked questions, listened intently to Alaric's strategic insights, and even shared her own theories about the Blight's true origin. The triplets, noticing her tentative shift, increased their efforts to show her respect and patience, giving her space while still making their presence felt. Alaric involved her in more discussions. Bram's possessiveness softened into a fierce, unwavering protectiveness, and Corvus continued his quiet, understanding support. Simultaneously, Alpha Daemon, perhaps sensing Seraphina's growing connection to the Blackwoods, directly escalated his aggressive maneuvers. He knew he was losing his hold on her, and his pride wouldn't allow it. What followed was a bold, undeniable incursion into Blackwood territory. Not phantom attacks this time. This was a full-scale assault on a border outpost, designed to test their defenses and provoke a response. The sounds of distant skirmishes, the frantic calls of Blackwood scouts filled the air. Daemon wanted war, and he was bringing it to their doorstep. The scent of ozone and fear hung heavy in the air. Sarah's goal was now twofold: to protect the Blackwood pack from Daemon's escalating aggression and to subtly test the sincerity and strength of the triplets' bond. She watched them, how they moved, how they reacted to the threat, how they included her in their plans. Emotionally, she was transitioning from a guardedness born of fear to a cautious willingness to engage, driven by both self-preservation and a burgeoning sense of loyalty to these men and this pack. This was her fight now, too. As Daemon's forces clashed with Blackwood patrols, Sarah instinctively sprang into action. She moved swiftly among the wounded Blackwood warriors, her healing abilities flowing freely, a bright beacon in the chaos. She applied poultices, stemmed bleeding, and whispered calming words, demonstrating her value and commitment, even before fully accepting the mate bond. It was an unspoken promise. She was here, and she wouldn't let them fall. Alpha Daemon's overt aggression had set the Blackwood territory ablaze with a palpable urgency. The air vibrated with anticipation of conflict. Seraphina, no longer a hesitant outsider, fully committed her formidable healing skills to the pack's defense efforts. She moved with a newfound purpose, her movements precise and confident, like a weaver working a complex loom. She went beyond passive assistance, actively joining Alaric in tactical discussions, her insights sharp and intuitive. "The blight isn't random," she explained during one tense strategy session, tracing a line on an old map with a slender finger. "It follows the ley lines because it siphons power directly from them. If we disrupt that connection, we cut off their supply." Her knowledge of the blighted lands, combined with her understanding of unseen energies, offered unique perspectives, because it was something no one else could see. More importantly, she understood the true nature of Daemon's power, his reliance on external forces to bolster his own. This meant putting herself in more direct danger, venturing closer to the front lines where skirmishes erupted like sudden wildfires. She applied poultices to torn flesh, stemmed torrents of blood, and used her subtle touch to ease the pain of fractured bones. Her compassion was boundless, a beacon in the brewing darkness. She explicitly stated her willingness to fight for this pack, her voice clear and unwavering, yet still separate from fully embracing the mate bond. Her goal was to protect the innocent and expose Daemon's larger, insidious scheme. Emotionally, she was driven by a powerful sense of responsibility, a burgeoning, fierce protectiveness for the Blackwood pack, which she was slowly, undeniably, starting to see as her own. During a particularly tense moment, as the elders debated a risky maneuver, one skeptical elder, an old male named Theron, scoffed. "A human healer dictates strategy now? What does she know of war?" Sarah turned to him, her gaze steady, unflinching. "I know disease, elder," she countered, her voice calm but firm. "And this is a disease on the land, on your pack. Daemon's power isn't in his claws, but in his corruption. He weakens from within, just like the blight." She used her newfound knowledge to refute his claims about the mate bond implicitly, showing her growing confidence and willingness to stand her ground. Her words were a quiet force, silencing the elder and solidifying her place, not just as a healer, but as a strategic mind invaluable to the pack. The triplets and Seraphina formulated a daring counter-operation, a surgical strike against one of Daemon's more aggressive incursions. It was a risky gambit, But Sarah's insights into the terrain and the enemy's tactics, combined with the triplets' raw power, promised success. They moved under the cloak of night, a silent, deadly force. The skirmish erupted with a visceral ferocity. Growls, the clang of shifting bones, the sharp scent of ozone and fear. Sarah, agile and focused, moved through the chaos, her satchel of remedies always at hand, her intuition guiding her to those in dire need. During the height of the confrontation, Bram, ever impulsive and fiercely protective, charged headlong into a cluster of Damon's rogue shifters, pushing too far, because he wanted to draw their attention away from the main Blackwood force. A vicious snarl, then a sickening crack. He crumpled, a ragged gash appearing on his flank, his usual fiery intensity replaced by a raw howl of pain. He was gravely injured, his breathing shallow. Sarah's world narrowed. Her heart skipped. All her past fears, all her hesitations, vanished in an instant, replaced by a searing, undeniable need. Her goal was simply to save him, driven by an instinctual love and loyalty she could no longer deny. Emotionally, she was overwhelmed with fear and fierce determination, her walls crumbling in the face of shared vulnerability. She lunged towards him, ignoring the continued chaos of the battle. She threw herself over his massive, bleeding form, her hands pressing against the gaping wound because her healing magic was the only thing that mattered. She poured every ounce of her essence into him, a vibrant silver light emanating from her hands, battling the encroaching darkness of his injury. The raw, intimate act of care, witnessed by all three brothers, solidified their trust and deepened their emotional connection in a way words couldn't. It was an overwhelming surge of energy, taxing her to the brink of exhaustion. Alaric and Corvus, their faces etched with a desperate hope, watched her, their own alpha power reaching out, a silent promise of support. She was saving their brother. And just like that, everything changed. As Bram's ragged breathing finally smoothed and the silver light faded, Seraphina was able to truly look at him. His eyes, still clouded with pain, held a deep, unshakable gratitude. She touched his hand, her fingers trembling, a silent acknowledgement of the profound shift in her feelings. The space between them burned with a new, undeniable warmth. The taste of victory, though sweet, was short-lived. Damon, enraged by his recent defeat and Seraphina's undeniable growing influence over the Blackwood pack, launched his most personal and cruel attack yet. His true objective revealed itself, shattering Sarah's fragile peace once more. He had captured her elderly confidant, Alara, the woman who knew her true nature, or perhaps the sickly child Alara, whom Sarah had healed. He used this hostage, this innocent soul from Seraphina's former isolated community, as leverage. "Return to your rightful place, Luna," his chilling message echoed through a captured Blackwood scout, "or watch your loved ones pay the price for your defiance." He was demanding Sarah return to his pack, essentially forcing her into an impossible choice: sacrifice herself and her newfound connections, or endanger those she cared for from her past. Sarah's heart was a leaden weight in her chest. This was the painful echo of her past vulnerability, the very reason she had fled. But then, a fierce determination rose within her, like a phoenix from ashes. She would not be a victim again. The Blackwood elders, seeing the direct threat to their pack and the undeniable power of Damon's renewed aggression, reluctantly agreed that a direct confrontation was inevitable. His brutality had united them, even those who still harbored doubts about Sarah. They realized this wasn't just about Aluna, it was about the survival of their entire lineage. Their home, their future, hung in the balance. Sarah's goal now was clear: to protect her past community, to protect the Blackwood pack, and to prevent Damon from winning, from ever wielding such power again. Emotionally, she was terrified and heartbroken, yet also fiercely determined not to be manipulated. She looked at Alaric, his face etched with grim resolve. She looked at Bram, still recovering, but his eyes burning with a possessive fury. She looked at Corvus, his quiet strength a solid anchor in the storm. Alaric, Bram, and Corvus stood united with Seraphina, their alpha power palpable, radiating outwards because their bond was unbreakable. It was a silent promise to fight alongside her, no matter the cost, signaling their unwavering commitment. This was the point of no return. The personal stake had become critical. The air crackled with a false sense of hope as the Blackwood Pack, with Seraphina and the Triplets leading the charge, initiated a daring rescue mission. Their goal was singular: to infiltrate Damon's stronghold and free the captive from Sarah's old community, either Alara, her trusted elder confidant, or the child, little Alara, whose fragile life Sarah had so carefully mended. The plan was bold, a desperate gambit born of necessity, because their loved one's life hung in the balance. Sarah felt a surge of resolve, a fierce determination to protect those innocents who had unknowingly become pawns in Damon's cruel game. They moved stealthily through the moonlit forest, a silent, deadly force. The scent of pine needles and damp earth clung to the night, broken only by the faint, musky scent of their united pack. Alaric's commands were whispered, precise, as they navigated the treacherous terrain. Bram moved like a shadow, his strength a silent promise of protection, while Corvus's intuition guided them through the trickiest paths, his senses picking up on every subtle shift in the wind. Sarah, her own senses heightened, felt a prickle of unease, a cold dread seeping into her bones. She should have trusted that feeling. What followed was a devastating ambush. Damon, cunning and ruthless, had anticipated their every move, turning their rescue operation into a brutal trap. Arrows tipped with dark, weakening magic rained down from the trees. Rogues, hidden in the shadows, lunged from unexpected angles, their eyes burning with a twisted loyalty to Damon. The Blackwood warriors, caught off guard, suffered heavy losses. The forest, once their ally, became a labyrinth of pain and chaos. A warrior she had just healed moments ago fell, his cry echoing her own rising panic. Sarah fought through the chaos, her healing magic working frantically, but it felt like bailing water from a sinking ship. She saw the despair in the eyes of the injured, the anguish of those losing their comrades. "This is my fault." The thought screamed in her mind, loud and accusing. She had led them into this. The familiar tendrils of self-doubt, the heavy weight of her past returning, began to constrict her heart. She was convinced she had brought only disaster, dragging this brave pack into her personal hell. Emotionally, she was in shock, guilt-ridden, and the familiar tendrils of self-doubt and fear of betrayal began to constrict her heart again, because this was exactly what she had run from. Amidst the chaos of the failed ambush, a Blackwood elder, injured and disillusioned, crumpled to the ground near Sarah. "Accursed Luna," he rasped, his voice filled with bitter accusation. "She brings only ruin." His words, though unfair, pierced her soul, further isolating her and cementing the crushing weight of her failure. The return to Blackwood territory was a somber procession. The air, usually vibrant with pack life, now hung heavy with grief and despair. Morale plummeted, a thick fog settling over the once resilient pack. Whispers, like poisonous tendrils, began to snake through the encampment. Some pack members questioned the triplets' leadership, openly wondering why their alphas had aligned themselves with a cursed Luna. "She brings bad luck," one muttered, loud enough for Sarah to overhear. Her past follows her. These were the very fears that had driven her into seclusion for so long. The captive from Sarah's old community, even if rescued, was gravely injured, deeply traumatized, or perhaps even lost during the ambush, deepening Sarah's guilt to an unbearable degree. A new scar ripped open in her already fragile heart. She saw the visible signs of strain on the triplets. Alaric, under the immense pressure of losing warriors and facing internal dissent, looked weary, his usually sharp gaze dulled by exhaustion. Bram's usual fiery intensity was dimmed, replaced by a quiet, brooding anger, his possessiveness now tinged with a helplessness he rarely showed. Corvus, though outwardly calm, carried a heavy sorrow in his eyes, his empathy reflecting Sarah's own pain back at her. Sarah, feeling the overwhelming weight of their potential loss, the pack's renewed skepticism, and her own crushing guilt began to push them away again. She believed, truly believed, that her presence was a detriment, a plague upon them. She retreated into herself, revisiting her solitary exile, her internal flaw of fearing abandonment overwhelming her. She sought out the quietest corners of the territory, her healing touch now focused inward, trying to mend a heart that felt irrevocably shattered. Her goal was to protect the triplets and the pack by removing herself, believing her presence was a detriment. Emotionally, she battled intense self-loathing, the old wounds of rejection festering, and a profound sense of isolation despite their physical presence. The vibrant connection they had shared now felt like a painful illusion because her history was repeating itself. She started packing her meager belongings, her movements slow and deliberate, driven by a quiet, desperate resolve. She couldn't watch them fall because of her. She wouldn't. She tried to quietly leave the pack territory under the cover of approaching dusk, but Corvus found her. He emerged from the shadows, his eyes reflecting her despair, yet offering no words, only a silent, steady presence. He stood between her and the path, a living embodiment of her dilemma. Corvus's silent presence was a physical barrier to her escape, yet also a profound question. He didn't demand, didn't argue. He simply was. Sarah looked at him, tears blurring her vision, because she was on the verge of returning to complete solitary exile. She truly believed it was the only way to protect anyone, including herself, from further pain. Her breath caught. "I can't," she whispered, the words ragged. "I can't do this anymore. I bring nothing but ruin." She believed her power was a curse, her very presence a magnet for disaster. She confronted her deepest fear, that she was inherently unlovable, tainted, destined to bring heartbreak to anyone who dared to care for her. The raw pain of her original rejection by Damon, the cruel laughter, the hollow ache of abandonment. It all resurfaced, her spirit shattered, echoing in the quiet night. She remembered the day Damon had cast her aside, her dreams crumbling to dust, leaving her with nothing but a gaping wound. She saw herself, a broken girl fleeing into the wilderness, hoping to disappear. And now, despite finding a flicker of hope, she was back in that same desolate place, considering the ultimate sacrifice. She considered severing the bond with the triplets, a painful, self-sacrificing act that would tear her soul. It would hurt, a searing agony, but perhaps it was necessary to save them from the fate she seemed destined to bring. She pictured them strong and unbroken without her shadow tainting their lives. This was her all-is-lost moment. Her initial goal of maintaining peace through independence seemed like the only viable, albeit devastating option. She felt utterly broken and alone. Her goal was to make the ultimate sacrifice for what she believed was the greater good, to break her own heart again to save others. Emotionally, she was in utter despair, contemplating resignation, feeling utterly broken and alone, a quiet resolve hardening in her shattered core. As the wind shifted, a silent, shared tear from the triplets, an ache in their collective bond, rippled through the distance, a subtle tremor that reached Sarah. It hinted at their own despair, their deep, unwavering connection to her, even as she made her agonizing decision to walk away. She felt it, clear as day, their pain mirroring her Seraphina own. Stood on the precipice of abandoning the bond, the biting cold of self-imposed exile already seeping into her bones. Her heart ached with the anticipated severance, a dull, throbbing pain. She clutched the small, worn satchel of herbs, her knuckles white. But then, a voice, quiet yet piercing, echoed in her mind. Not a spoken word, but a resonant thought, clear as a bell. It was Corvus, his empathy reaching across the distance, reminding her of his earlier revelation about Damon's larger plot. It wasn't about your worth, Sarah. It was about your power. And theirs. Together, you are a force they fear. And then, Bram's raw, untamed essence, a memory of his fierce protectiveness, surged through her, whispering, "You're stronger than you know." Alaric's steady presence, the anchor of their shared destiny, followed, a quiet promise of unwavering support. A crucial memory then surfaced, the image of little Ilara, her fever breaking under Sarah's hands and the parents' tearful gratitude. That pure, uncomplicated act of healing, completely separate from any pack politics or mate bonds, suddenly felt like a lifeline. It wasn't about being a rejected Luna. It was about being Seraphina, the healer, the protector. She realized that her original rejection wasn't a reflection of her unworthiness, but a calculated attack by a greater, more insidious force using Damon as a puppet. More importantly, she understood that isolating herself wouldn't protect her or anyone else. True safety lay not in hiding, but in facing fear head-on and embracing the strength found in genuine connection, especially with the triplets who had proven their worth time and again. Her goal shifted dramatically from self-preservation through isolation to reclaiming her power and fighting for her true home, the home she was now building with them. Emotionally, she found a quiet, fierce resolve, a burning desire for justice, and a blossoming acceptance of her bond with the Blackwood Alphas. This was her rebirth, the moment she began to truly heal. She looked up, the despair beginning to recede, replaced by a steely determination. She sought out the triplets, not with hesitation, but with a new, quiet fire in her eyes, ready to speak truth and accept her destiny. She knew she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Seraphina, now fully engaged and with the triplets by her side, felt a surge of invigorated purpose. The fragile crack in her emotional walls had widened into an open gateway, allowing the unwavering strength of the three alphas to flow into her, bolstering her resolve. She worked alongside Alaric, their minds melding with surprising ease to devise a bold, strategic plan. Their goal was clear: expose Damon's broader conspiracy and defeat him decisively, because merely containing him wouldn't be enough. He needed to be stripped of his power, his influence eradicated completely. Sarah used her unique insights into the unseen world, her deep connection to the land's energies, and her extensive healing knowledge. She identified subtle weaknesses in Damon's domain, perhaps forgotten ley lines that could be exploited, or ancient healing remedies that could be weaponized against the dark magic he wielded. Bram's ferocity became a vital asset, his raw strength now channeled with precision as he honed the pack's combat readiness. Corvus's intuition, sharp and unerring, helped refine the plan, sensing potential pitfalls and unseen threats. Their combined efforts wove a complex tapestry of strategy, each thread crucial to their success. The Blackwood elders, who had once questioned Seraphina, now watched her with newfound awe. They witnessed her strategic brilliance, her unwavering courage, and the undeniable unity she shared with their alphas. Seeing her resolve, they reluctantly, and then enthusiastically, threw their full support behind the triplets. They recognized her not just as a mate, but as their true Luna, a vital leader whose presence strengthened their entire pack. The pack, reinvigorated by her commitment, rallied around them, their morale soaring, eager for the coming confrontation. Seraphina's goal was to execute the plan and achieve ultimate victory, reclaiming her past and securing her future. Emotionally, she was focused, driven, and felt a powerful sense of unity with the triplets, their bond a living, breathing entity. A final, quiet moment of connection passed between Sarah and the triplets. She reached out, her hand finding Alaric's, then Bram's, then Corvus's. Their fingers intertwined, a silent promise of unwavering support and enduring love. They exchanged a shared look, a profound understanding passing between them, before they headed into the decisive battle, their unbreakable bond a testament to their unified purpose. The Blackwood Pack, a unified force spearheaded by the triplets and Seraphina, moved with grim determination towards Damon's stronghold. The journey was fraught with tension, the air thick with anticipation, like the hush before a storm. Minor skirmishes erupted along the way, testing their resolve, but only strengthening their combined battle prowess. Alaric led with strategic precision, directing their movements with expert efficiency. Bram, a thunderous force, met every challenge with raw power, his growls echoing through the forest. Corvus, his senses extended, protected their flanks, his keen eyes spotting dangers before they materialized. Seraphina moved among them, no longer just a healer behind the lines, but an active participant on the battlefield. She used her healing skills swiftly and efficiently, mending wounds with powerful precision, her movements fluid even amidst the chaos. She proved her worth in combat because her abilities were indispensable, preventing further losses. The suspense built with every step, a crescendo of impending confrontation. With every heartbeat, the emotional stakes became palpable as they approached their inevitable clash with Damon and the hidden forces that had betrayed her so cruelly. This wasn't just a battle for territory, it was a battle for justice, for peace, and for the future of her newly found family. They finally arrived at Damon's stronghold, a looming, oppressive fortress carved from black rock, its presence radiating malevolence. The air here was thick with tension, heavy with the scent of fear and battle, a palpable energy that pressed down on them. Sarah looked at the triplets, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. They met her gaze, their eyes burning with fierce determination, and nodded, a silent promise of unwavering support. Without another word, they plunged into the climax, ready to confront the darkness that had haunted her for so long. The climactic battle erupted within the dark heart of Damon's stronghold, a maelstrom of raw power and primal fury. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and fear, the ground trembling under the clash of bodies and the howl of shifting wolves. Seraphina, no longer the terrified Luna, moved with a newfound confidence, a radiant force amidst the chaos. She leveraged her unique healing abilities, not just to mend, but to disrupt, to counteract the dark energies Damon wielded. Her intuition, sharp as a honed blade, guided her through the swirling melee, because it showed her where to strike, where to defend. With the triplets fighting fiercely beside her, their combined power a blinding tempest, Seraphina directly confronted Alpha Damon. His eyes, once arrogant, now held a flicker of desperation as he faced not just 3 alphas, but a Luna reborn. She didn't shy away. Instead, she stepped forward, her voice resonating with ancient power, amplified by the collective mental link she now shared with Alaric, Bram, and Corvus. She exposed his machinations to all, sending images and truths directly into the minds of Damon's bewildered pack. She revealed the truth about her past rejection, how it wasn't about her unworthiness, but a calculated plot by the hidden faction to discredit powerful Lunas and weaken rival packs. She laid bare the larger conspiracy, tearing down the veil of his deceit. The triplets fought as one, their movements a synchronized dance of destruction, their combined strength overwhelming Damon. Alaric, strategic and precise, found every weakness in Damon's defenses. Bram, a whirlwind of furious power, unleashed his raw strength. Corvus, with his empathetic connection, disrupted Damon's own mental command, making him falter. Seraphina, standing tall, not just as a healer but as a strong, chosen Luna, faced Damon down. Her eyes blazed with a righteous fury. "You thought you broke me," she stated, her voice clear and unwavering, "but you only made me stronger." She proved that his cruelty could not define her, could not break her spirit, and certainly could not shatter the unbreakable bond she now shared. Damon, stripped of his power, his influence exposed, finally crumpled, his reign of terror utterly defeated. The hidden faction, their puppet broken, scattered, their plans unraveled for all to see. The battle ended, the deafening roar replaced by the ragged gasps of exhausted warriors. The dust settled slowly, revealing Seraphina, bruised but undeniably victorious, standing beside the triplets. The bond between them radiated, a palpable force of undeniable power and unity. In the immediate aftermath of the climax, a profound silence descended, heavy with relief and the echoes of battle. The wounded were tended to first, with Seraphina tirelessly moving among them. Her healing skills, now more potent than ever, seemed to mend not just flesh but spirit. She worked quickly, her hands glowing faintly with a restorative light, because every life mattered. The remnants of Damon's shattered pack, bewildered and leaderless, were quickly dealt with, their fear replaced by a quiet awe for the Blackwood Alphas and their powerful Luna. The exposed conspirators from the hidden faction were apprehended, their secrets laid bare, their power dismantled. The Blackwood Elders, their faces etched with a mixture of exhaustion and profound respect, approached Seraphina. They had witnessed her bravery, her power, and the undeniable strength of the triplet bond. With solemn eyes, the stern-faced female elder who had once questioned her stepped forward. "Seraphina," she announced, her voice ringing with newfound authority, "by ancient law and undeniable might, we acknowledge you. Not just a mate, but our true Luna, a vital leader, one who unites." It was a public acknowledgement, solidifying her place within the pack, not out of obligation, but out of genuine respect and admiration. The captive from Sarah's old community, a tearful Alara, was brought forward, safe and sound, though still shaken. Sarah rushed to her, embracing her tightly. The moment was symbolic, signaling the healing of past wounds and the mending of severed ties. It showed that her past could finally be reconciled with her present. A collective sigh of relief seemed to ripple through the pack. Soon after, a celebration, hushed at first, then growing in joyous intensity, began within the Blackwood pack. It was a stark contrast to the despair of previous days, marking not just a victory, but a new hopeful beginning. Weeks turned into months, and Seraphina found herself fully integrated into the Blackwood pack, her presence as vital as the sun to their flourishing lands. Her bond with Alaric, Bram, and Corvus had deepened beyond anything she could have imagined. It was a tapestry woven with shared experiences, profound understanding, and an unbreakable love that pulsated between them. She moved with an unshakable confidence now, her once guarded heart open and radiant. She worked alongside her mates, her unique skills valued and respected, not just as a healer, but as a strategic mind and an empathetic leader. The triplets, having learned patience and understanding through their journey, nurtured their shared bond with profound respect for her independence and her past. Alaric sought her counsel on pack matters, valuing her intuition as much as his own strategic mind. Bram, still fiercely protective, now expressed it through quiet support and unwavering loyalty, his intensity a comforting warmth. Corvus, always perceptive, continued to be her silent anchor, anticipating her needs and offering comfort without a single word. Seraphina was often seen leading new pack initiatives, perhaps expanding her healing community to include both shifters and humans, demonstrating the bridge she had become between two worlds. She was a Luna not defined by rejection, but by choice, strength, and a boundless, enduring love. Her goal now was to build a thriving, inclusive future with her mates and her pack, a legacy of healing and unity. Emotionally, she felt profound peace, deep love, and a sense of having truly found her home and her true self. The journey had been arduous, fraught with pain and betrayal, but it had led her to a future far grander, far more fulfilling than she could have ever imagined. Epilogue: a year later, Seraphina and the triplets stood together on a sun-drenched bluff overlooking the thriving landscape of their united territories. The Blackwood pack flourished, their bonds stronger than ever, their borders expanded to include human settlements living in harmony with shifters under Sarah's compassionate guidance. She was visibly content, her eyes shining with a quiet joy, and perhaps, just perhaps, a subtle, knowing hand resting over her gently rounded abdomen hinted at a new life growing within her, a testament to the enduring love that defied all odds. The scars of her past were faint echoes, replaced by the profound peace and strength of her triple bond. They spoke of the future, not of past battles, but of growth, of integration, and of the unique family they had forged, a testament to enduring love and the boundless power of healing.